extremely glad that Anil Saini is, come to us and, is sharing his, memories as well as how the design grew in this country. And the type of contributions, the design school has done to the industrial prowess of our country, especially the automotive, industry was very, very important.
So I started in Bajaj Auto way back in 86, right? And there I was there for 9 years. And that time the entire automotive design was very much in infancy, right? I think there was only 1 or 2 designers in industry. Bajaj Telco had a couple of them, 1 or 2 of them, and Kinetic Engineering had 1 person from our place only. So that was all which was in terms of ecosystem of the automotive design or styling, which as we call it, which is a controversial term, and we can talk about that also. But that is what was the first studio in a big way Bajaj Auto became. And then, so that is one of the area where I developed the entire studio with all the facilities, etc. Clay modeling, this, that, the computer system. In fact, the Alias got instituted. Alias was instituted in IDC in I think 87 or something. And that's when we bought in Bajaj Auto. So that became the big. And Alias actually got me interested into computerization of the industrial design. So then I joined a company known as PTC. PTC makes Pro Engineer softwares. And I was there for good 12 years, And then, but the roles became very, very diverse and, then I was not very happy. So shifted back to automotive back. And that is in General Motors in Bangalore. General Motors Bangalore was again a new studio, automotive studio, where everything related to automotive design was happening. So that I was there for good more than 15 years. Just retired, in this February. So that, all along automotive field, which is what I will like to talk about a little bit more. But you guys, whatever you would like to know, I leave it on to you from this point on.
So Anil, just to start with the discussion, like exactly the way you were saying, styling is so important and styling is so critical for any product or any situation because visual perception is the most key to anything. So why should styling be taboo?
Absolutely not. Styling should not be taboo. In fact, I remember Professor Twankar's, he was doing research in perception that time, and then, he was talking about that at the end of the day, there's only one field which nobody else does in place of designer, instead of designer.
Exactly.
Which is the visual design. We are the only masters of that. The rest, everything can be shared or can be cohabited by some other profession.
Very well
professional.
Said. Exactly.
But that is an area which is not shared by anybody. So visual design is the key of one of the most vital element of the industrial design.
Very true.
Usability, user-centered design, everything else, there can be people who are expert. Like, for example, I'll tell you, we studied ergonomics and we felt when we are studying the ergonomics is the forte of industrial designers, right? Though Mr. Jijire came from the Calcutta Institute of Ergonomics, but we felt that this is the forte of industrial designers. But in General Motors, the ergonomics sits with engineering function. Designers have nothing to do with ergonomics, which is very strange. So it can be co-shared with somebody else, but visual design is absolutely not shared with anybody else.
At the same time, visual design, everybody wants to talk about it. So that's another challenge, right? So You have to be so empowered. You have to be so empowered with vocabulary, with scientific knowledge, with design principles that you should be able to defend what you're doing. So that's the whole beauty about how we can make, styling is just not skin deep. Styling is much more than that. It is about visual perception. It is about how you can sell your product. It is about what the product impression is. So in fact,
branding also.
Branding. My first success story of Z-Line pump, was all because of shape. Great technology is there, but they could not sell the product.
Right.
Once the shape was given, the product became runaway success, and that becomes very, very critical. Wonderful.
Absolutely.
So any other questions from your side, students?
Hello, sir. I am Paresh from Senior Mobility only. So
Senior mobility, okay.
yeah, basically, may I know your first role what is your role in MG Motors? Sorry, General Motors, GM Motors. Sorry, yeah, General Motors.
Role in General Motors,
What
right?
was your role in General Motors?
So before I joined, they had started with two faculties of automotive design. One is what we call as the conceptual design, creative design. And second is the digital modeling. So digital modeling, was getting formed in the country that point of time. But then rest of the faculties, which are very critical to have a automotive complete design studio, was not there, which is like color and trim, right? Then visualization part of that. Then there's a design quality, which was, absent, or in fact, first time born in country that time, or started in country. So then it became a complete studio, which could deliver car design. So we participated in a lot of redesign projects, and we also participated in giving the concept cars for the Indian market. So that was the main role, you can say, is to really negotiate with engineering and also propose new vehicles and also upgrade the current vehicles. Yeah. Does it answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
In fact, Anil, just to take you back to the sunny days. So we know that was, the heady start of using plastics. So
Correct.
what is your experience with technology and design? How to bring in new materials technologies, and what are the challenges you faced in the company, like a very traditional company which years together made only metal, scooters, which was
Very
Bajaj
interesting
Auto.
question. Very interesting question.
So the type of transition you made them do,
Right. In fact, as when we are studying, and that time was the very, very first job after graduating, so your wings are still not clipped, right? You want to soar high. So naturally, the plastics gave since the question is on plastics, much more chance to design the shapes, right? Sheet metal is very limiting in certain ways. In certain ways, it is very, flexible also. But it is much more limiting than the plastics. We all know that part. So that was the freedom that could be, done. But to realize the full potential, I was too raw. I must say that, So that flexibility was newfound flexibility for the industry that time, because everything was being made in the sheet metal. Even the other scooter which came just after I joined Bajaj Auto was Kinetic Honda, and that was also sheet metal. Surprisingly, the original Kinetic Honda, Japanese, was in plastics. That's why the shape is very much plasticky shape. But it was converted to sheet metal because we did not know how to make the plastics. So Sunny was a very experimental thing for not only designers, but also for the manufacturer. So there were a lot of limitations at that point of time. And one of the limitations was what colors could be given, right? The color, this was painted, Sunny was painted, but originally it was thought to be pigmented. But pigmented, we did not have the idea of really how do you retain the pigmentation, whether it will not discolor, etc., etc. So they chose to paint. That itself was a struggle. But then it gave a freedom on the color schemes. But then we wanted the color scheme very well coordinated. As designer, we would love to have that. But the plastics and sometimes especially the resin and the rubber did not support the same color. So one of the basic learning was that, even though you are able to do something in one technology, but other technology may not provide you the same, amount of freedom which was needed, So I wanted like red colored handle grips, right? And red color rim, matching rim, or black color body, So body is fine as long as. In fact, one vehicle did come out in blue color rim at that point of time, but we couldn't really change the resin of the seat or the vinyl of the seat or the rubber grips. So there are a lot of technology limitations which keep getting changed as the time passes by. And we have to realize that as designers, what is limiting and how we can really get ahead of that. In fact, very often we went directly to the suppliers and molders, had discussions, what can be done, what cannot be done, which, I'm sure Professor Chakravarti is very, very aware of that, how to struggle with the industry and leverage that.
How to push them to out of their comfort zone. What happens, you're used to a particular, particular thing. And as designers, we come up with always new requirements. So how to, get to those new requirements is always a struggle. People, the industry is not ready. Sometimes our own company will also be not ready, but we are the ones who have to champion the cause. In metal trim, that is the whole beauty, that the designers champion the cause and take it forward. That becomes a very critical aspect.
Right. So I'll share one small anecdote about the shaping of the second proposal. So that time the facility was not there to really have the clay models when the Saini was done, right? So the whole model, the first model of Saini was done in paper, believe me.
Wow, we need those pictures if you still hold them somewhere.
I don't have any pictures, I wish I could have shared with you guys.
It must be in the archive of Bajaj by any chance.
Bajaj archive definitely would have it, So picture, the whole body was conceptualized, first put together with the wires and the paper pasted on that, like a kite. Because there was no other material which could have been done. And then we made the second one in, we could have done it, the classic or plaster of Paris, like we learned in IDC, right? Plaster of Paris. But it was too heavy to hold it, and like a full, body of the scooter, which is little loose as compared to car, fiberglass, that was not possible there, plaster of Paris. So then we did in the paper. So that's why some of the shape has got a reminiscent of the papery kind of feel,
Yeah.
But I was very unhappy with that. Then as the time grew, the second model we did in thermocol. So there the shape could be given much more.
So again, we have both the Saini and of course, later on, a lot of IDC alumni joined Anil, and there were multiple, variants which came out.
Here you can see the shape being more bio, more flowy, and more using the three-dimensionality, which was missing in that first one.
But again, a very important point you mentioned, Anil. As a student of design, when we see, "Arey, Anil ne ye kaise banaya hoga?" For example. But when you look at the process you followed, and then the challenges at the dealer level, then we know why a particular design is selected. For example, same thing happened with my petrol pump. When I designed the Z-line in sheet metal, I could do only flat forms, right?
Right.
I was very happy. I brought a whole team of IDC students. And they said, "What? Yaar, to kuch bhi ganda banaya." Very true. If you'll see from a pure point of view, you are seeing magazines, form magazines and fancy plastic shapes, and you see this dabba with edges and radiuses and all. And of course, you're not impressed, right? You'll be impressed only with the challenges, right? Because of challenges, we have come to a particular level. At the same time, I could change the semantic look in the Z-line. Within the constraint of sheet metal, we could change the semantic look. Within the constraint of a scooter industry, you could bring in plastics and you can bring in those, curved sides, which are not there earlier, for example. But again, interesting, the dealers could have thought that maybe, let me not get confused. Let them also think it is flat. So isliye they went with the flat design. So flat में उसको पता नहीं लगा metal है क्या plastic है. For example,
right.
There could have been that fear also at the back. During that time, especially when Anil Saini had launched this product, there was a great fear that plastics will break.
Right. Absolutely true. Yeah.
And you had to camouflage that somehow. So that's one way the dealers would have thought of, and it was very, very challenging because plastics were really bad at that time. The technology was not that advanced that plastics were today's plastics, which are engineering plastics, we won't break at all.
Right. And tinkering, could be done with the sheet metal. You just get it dented, painted, and you can get it fixed very cheap. In plastic, you have to throw that thing and you have to replace it.
That was another big problem with the dealers would think of, and even the buyers. "Arey yaar, kuch takkar lag gaya to pura toot jayega, naya lagana padega." All those type of things. So when you go into market, students, I want to address this very important issue. It is not just form. It is a trade-off between various factors. But you're the only guy who has to hold fort with form. So you have to really fight it out. Because the trading will happen with manufacturing, with type of materials you use, with the market, with the brand, like Anil was saying. Multiple trade-offs will happen. For everything, your form will get traded off, right? But how can you still stick to your guns and say, "This is what I want, this is what we can push the boundaries and reach a stage," is what we need to all do.
I have one question. So when the decision to change to plastic parts from sheet metal, what were the main things which were expected to change? Like one will be definitely cost. and replacement costs and the shape. But were there any other factors which were helped by the shift to plastic than sheet metal?
The lightweightness, right? That was definitely the cause, one other reason. And then the new technology which was coming in the market, right? So things were already starting to appear to make more plastics, And that challenge as an engineering challenge, also company wants to explore. Because then for the future, you are setting up your technology. For future, you are setting up your product design, So there are several such factors which actually drive that or drove that, at that point of time.
My name is Sukhdev and I'm MDes second year product design student. As we see in different products, even in vehicles also, the technology is already the same. And the engineering aspects, the internal mechanisms are same. The outer form is every time we see in the market, there's a new car or new vehicle come up and it has a quite new form. And so how do you overcome the challenges which are to build the new form for the same product?
I'll partially, rephrase your question, So what you're saying, the underpinning, the chassis, the architecture remains more or less same, right? Which is true. It keeps changing time to time, but the duration is not as much as less as when the body changes.
So
right?
While changing the body, what all aspects do you think you should change and what are the challenges?
See, first of all, the newness in the trends, right? If you just take 10 years of any vehicle's variety and versions, if you take 10 years, 15 years, let's take any vehicle which comes to your mind, 2-3 generations, if you see, it has drastically changed, right? Let's take which one? Honda City, let's say, it used to be such a plain Jane in 2004-5 version, right? In 15 years, where we have come in Honda City, which happens with all the other vehicles also, right? Now, first thing is driven by the trends. You have to comply to the market and you have to be really, good, chic looking as compared to what you were, right? So that is the major driver. The second major driver is the brand. So brand identity comes from the shape. So that keeps getting either redefined, redesigned, or reformed. So let's take example of BMW, the kidney-shaped grills, right? Which used to be very plain grills. Now they are very bold, correct? So that evolution of the brand, it's evolution of the brand. We are very bold now. We are much more different, and the shape of that brand comes from the kidney-shaped grill. So that becomes another factor to look at. Third factor is the inherent change in the technology, if that happens. Then there are minor factors which I don't think is very severe, but it has played part in the history with aerodynamics, right? So cars were much more nosedive, but then they became flat up. Now they look up, right? The stances become very different. While the aerodynamics has only evolved and it has remained more or less same. But the interpretations have changed over the period of time. 70s cars, which were really nosedive kind of thing, now they are no longer nosedive because evolution has happened of the field. So those are another technical factors which change the shape. So there are several factors, but these are the high level factors which probably bring the changes in the shape. Make sense? Does it answer you?
Yeah.
You're looking for that?
Yeah.
So then who defines the trend? What makes you define that the trend has changed and something has to change?
So trend studies are constantly going on, not only by the automotive designers or planners, but other industries also, right? So you have the trend studies reports there, what is going on. But the most important thing is the designer himself or herself reinterpreting or interpreting what's going on in the market. Because something that is changing in the textiles, something that is changing in the, let's say, white goods, how do you interpret for the automotive? There's no direct interpretation or direct report which says, today color trends are the much more direct correlation is there. But shapes is your own interpretation. And a lot of auto shows and students' project actually drive that change. So in auto shows, you have the future project displayed, the future cars or concept cars. That defines the trends. And then you study that, okay, what others are doing, how others are interpreting, and then also the student work. So you guys push the boundary of okay, what could be the future?
Very true. So fabulous. So thank you so much, Anil, for this wonderful session. We actually, went through the history of design to a large extent, but also looked at the core value of how form and perception are very critical, and the various factors which affect the form and perception, including manufacturing, materials, technology, branding, and of course we also talked about how the customer finally has, is conscious about what they get. Again, thank you so much, Anil, and we'll catch up again.
Thank you so much for inviting me and having me over from your busy schedules.
Welcome.
It was
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
right up. Thank you.